The sky above New York City was usually a dull gray, filled with smog and the noise of millions of people living their lives. But today, the sky was silent. It was a strange, heavy silence that pressed down on the streets, making the noise of the cars and the people seem smaller. David Miller stood on the roof of a tall building, looking up. He was a pilot in the Air Force, waiting for his orders. He was currently on a break, drinking a cup of coffee that had gone cold. He was not the only one looking up. On the busy streets below, people stopped walking. Drivers stopped their cars and looked out of the windows. Children stopped playing. Everyone felt it. It was like the air was suddenly full of electricity. The clouds began to move, not because of the wind, but because something massive was pushing them aside. At first, they looked like dark spots in the blue sky. Then, they grew larger very quickly. They were not birds. They were not planes. They were giant, metal ships, shaped like jagged spears. They blocked out the sun. The city fell into a sudden, dark shadow. There were hundreds of them, descending from space. David dropped his coffee cup. It shattered on the concrete roof, but he did not hear it. He grabbed his radio, his heart beating fast in his chest. "Control tower, this is Miller," he shouted, though there was static on the line. "Do you see this? We have unidentified aircraft entering the atmosphere. Massive numbers." There was no answer. Just static. Then, a voice spoke. It did not come from the radio. It came from everywhere. It vibrated through the metal of the skyscrapers, through the concrete of the streets, and inside the bones of every person in the city. It was a cold, mechanical voice that spoke English, but with a strange, echoing quality. "Submit," the voice said. "Resistance is an error you cannot afford. Disarm immediately." Panic exploded on the streets. People began to scream and run. Cars crashed into each other as drivers tried to flee. It was chaos. In the center of Manhattan, Jessica Moore was working as a paramedic. She was just finishing her shift when the shadow covered the city. She stepped out of her ambulance, her eyes wide. "What is that?" she whispered to her partner, a young man named Tom. Tom looked pale. "I don't know, Jess. It looks like an invasion." Before Jessica could say anything, the ships fired. There was no warning shot. There was no negotiation. Bright beams of blue light shot down from the belly of the lead ship. They did not hit the buildings. They hit the water. The Atlantic Ocean boiled. A massive column of steam rose miles into the air. The energy weapons heated the water instantly. Then, the shock wave hit. It was like a wall of solid wind. Windows in every skyscraper shattered into millions of pieces. Glass rained down on the streets like glitter. Cars were flipped over. People were thrown off their feet. Jessica grabbed the side of her ambulance to stay standing. "Get down!" she screamed at the civilians running nearby. "Get away from the glass!" On the roof, David was thrown to his knees. The air pressure made his ears pop painfully. He scrambled up, wiping dust from his eyes. He looked at the harbor. A massive wall of water was rising. The alien weapon had displaced millions of tons of water. A tsunami was forming, heading straight for the city. "I have to get to the airbase," David said to himself. He ran across the roof to the waiting helicopter. His hands shook as he strapped himself in. He had flown in combat zones before, but he had never seen anything like this. This was not an army. This was a force of nature. He lifted the helicopter off the roof, fighting the turbulent winds. Below him, the city was a grid of panic. He could see the water rushing in, swallowing the docks, moving fast toward the financial district. He keyed his microphone again. Mayday! Mayday! New York is under attack. I repeat, we are under attack. This time, a voice answered. It was frantic. Commander, we have reports coming in from everywhere. London, Tokyo, Beijing, Moscow. They are hitting every major military base on the planet at the same time. Our satellites, they are gone. They knocked out our comms in the first minute. Who are they? David asked, banking the helicopter hard to the left to avoid falling debris from a nearby skyscraper. We don't know, the controller said. But they aren't here to talk. David flew towards his base, which was located just outside the city. As he flew over the suburbs, he saw the destruction. The beams of light had reached inland. He saw the smoking remains of the army base. There were no buildings left. Just craters and fire. Despair washed over him. How could they fight this? These aliens had technology that could destroy cities in seconds. Humanity was still using gunpowder and jet fuel. It felt like a caveman trying to fight a tank. Suddenly, a bright red light filled the cockpit. A warning alarm screamed at him. Incoming! The computer yelled. David looked up. 3 small alien fighters were diving towards him. They were fast, moving in ways that human planes could not. They made no sound, just a blur of motion. Brake right! David yelled, pushing the stick as hard as he could. The helicopter was not fast enough. A bolt of blue energy struck the tail rotor. The helicopter spun violently out of control. David struggled with the controls, but the machine was dying. He had to get out. He pulled the ejection lever. The roof of the helicopter blew off, and his seat fired upward. His parachute deployed with a jerk. He floated down towards the burning suburbs, watching the alien ships zip through the air like angry hornets. They were hunting down anything that tried to fly. He landed hard in a park, rolling on the grass to absorb the impact. He quickly cut the parachute lines and ran for cover behind a small maintenance building. He peered out. One of the alien ships hovered low over the street. It was sleek and silver, reflecting the fires below. A ramp lowered, and strange creatures walked out. They were tall, with dark purple skin and shiny armor. They held weapons that glowed at the tip. A group of survivors, a family of 4, ran out of a nearby house. They had their hands up. They were trying to surrender. The father was shouting, "We surrender. Please don't shoot." David held his breath. Maybe they would take prisoners. Maybe this was just an occupation. The lead alien raised its weapon. Without hesitation, without pausing to listen, it fired. The beam turned the family into nothing but ash. It was cold. Efficient. Cruel. David felt a fire ignite in his chest. The fear was replaced by a cold, hard rage. These were not soldiers. They were exterminators. They thought humans were nothing more than pests to be crushed. He checked his sidearm. He had a standard 9mm pistol. It was useless against their armor, but he was a soldier. He did not hide when civilians were being slaughtered. He looked across the park. He saw movement. A young woman was dragging an injured man towards the trees, trying to hide from the patrol. It was Jessica. She had made it out of the city before the worst of the wave hit, but she was not safe. The alien patrol turned its sensors toward the trees. They had detected movement. David had to do something. He could not let them reach Jessica. He stood up from behind the building and fired his pistol into the air. "Hey!" he yelled at the top of his lungs. "Over here!" The aliens turned their helmeted heads towards him. It was a suicide move, and David knew it. But he also knew something that the aliens did not. Humans do not just roll over and die. When you back a human into a corner, they fight with everything they have. The aliens raised their weapons. David braced himself. This was it. The end. But before the aliens could fire, a jet roared overhead. It was an F-22, one of the few that had managed to get airborne. It fired a missile, streaking towards the alien ship. The alien ship tried to dodge, but the missile exploded close enough to damage its stabilizers. The ship wobbled and crashed into a house. David did not wait. He sprinted across the park towards Jessica. "Get up! We have to move!" he shouted, grabbing the injured man's arm. Jessica looked at David, then at the burning ship. You distracted them," she said, breathless. "They aren't invincible," David said, his eyes locked on the alien soldiers who were now recovering from the blast. "They can bleed. We just need to find a way to make them bleed." Above them, the sky was still filled with the enemy ships. The smoke rose from the ruins of New York. Earth had taken the first hit. It was a devastating blow. Millions were probably dead. The governments were silent. The military was scrambling, but as David helped Jessica and the injured man towards the cover of the forest, he realized the war was not over. The aliens had mistaken humanity's silence for weakness. They had mistaken our lack of technology for a lack of spirit. David checked his magazine. 3 bullets left. "We need to find others," David said. "We need to organize." Jessica nodded, wiping soot from her face. Her expression was grim, but her eyes were determined. "I know people. Civilians who can fight. We aren't soldiers, but we aren't cowards either." They disappeared into the trees, leaving the burning city behind. The aliens controlled the skies, but down on the ground, amongst the ruins, the survivors were waking up. The shock was wearing off, replaced by a primal instinct to survive and protect their home. The first hit had been taken. It had hurt. It had crippled them. But the aliens had made a fatal error. They had left humans alive. They had given David, Jessica, and millions like them a reason to fight. And as long as one human was left breathing, the war was not lost. The sun began to set, but the fires kept the night bright. It was the dawn of a new age. An age where humanity would not just fight for survival, but would fight for revenge. They would make sure that Earth never suffered a day like this again. No matter the cost. The rain fell hard, mixing with the gray ash that covered the ruins of the suburban neighborhood. It had been 3 days since the sky turned black and the beams of light destroyed the cities. The smoke was so thick now that it blocked out the sun, turning the day into a permanent twilight. Mark Reed crouched behind a crumbled brick wall, holding a rusty hunting rifle. His hands were covered in grease and dirt. He was not a soldier anymore. He used to be a Marine, but that was a lifetime ago. Now, he built skyscrapers. He drove cranes. He was a simple man who liked to build things, not destroy them. But looking at the street in front of him, Mark realized that life was over. Across the road, the alien troops now known as Zildar from their broadcast before the blackout were marching in perfect lines. They were tall, with dark purple skin that looked like leather. They wore armor that glowed faintly in the dark. They were scanning the houses, looking for survivors. Every few minutes, a blue flash would light up a window, followed by the sound of silence. They were clearing the area, house by house. Mark checked his rifle. He had 5 bullets. Beside him, a young man named Tim shook with fear. Tim was a neighbor, a kid who worked at a grocery store. He held a baseball bat. "We can't fight them, Mark," Tim whispered, his voice trembling. "They have lasers. We have sticks. Look at them. They look like gods." Mark looked at Tim. "They aren't gods, kid. I saw one trip over a curb earlier. They bleed. They just have better toys." In the basement of a nearby library, 3 blocks away, Sarah Jenkins sat in front of a wall of old radios. She was a tactical analyst for the police department before the world ended. Now, she sat in the dark, surrounded by candles and maps. She was trying to find a pattern. She wore a headset that was connected to a shortwave radio. It was old technology, from the last century. The aliens could easily jam modern cell phones and military satellites, but they seemed to ignore the old analog frequencies. They probably thought humans were too primitive to use them. "Come on," Sarah muttered. "Talk to me." Static filled her ears. Then, a voice broke through. It was faint and full of interference. "Sector 7, need help, engaging at the bridge." Sarah marked the spot on her map with a red pen. "Copy, Sector 7. Hold on. We are trying to coordinate." She grabbed a microphone. "This is EchoNet. Any units in the northern district? We have movement at the old mall." She didn't just listen, she learned. By listening to the alien chatter on stolen scanners, she figured something out. The Zuldar were arrogant. They didn't use encryption for their ground troops because they didn't think humans were smart enough to understand it. They talked about their pacification protocols and their harvest quotas. They treated this invasion like a pest control job. They were bored. They were lazy. That was their weakness. Back on the street, Mark watched the patrol leader point at the house where he and Tim were hiding. The leader made a clicking sound, and 3 soldiers broke off from the main group and walked toward the wall. "They know we are here," Tim squeaked. "No," Mark said calmly. "They are just sweeping. That's the problem with machines. They follow a routine. We aren't going to wait for them." Mark reached into his pocket and pulled out a small remote. It was a detonator he had rigged up using parts from a toy car and some construction explosives. He had placed traps in the abandoned cars along the street earlier that morning. "Wait," Mark whispered. "Wait until they are between the blue truck and the red sedan." The 3 aliens walked down the center of the street. Their heavy boots crunched on the glass and broken concrete. They passed the blue truck. They stepped next to the red sedan. "Now," Mark said. He pressed the button. The explosion was not huge, but it was loud. The 2 cars, packed with blasting caps and scrap metal, blew up simultaneously. The shock waved through the aliens against the brick walls of the houses. One of them was crushed by the engine block of the sedan. "Go! Go!" Mark yelled. He stood up and fired his rifle. The bullet struck the armor of the second alien, knocking it back but not killing it. It raised its weapon, but Tim was already moving. Tim didn't think, he just ran. He sprinted across the street, jumped over a burning pile of debris, and swung the baseball bat with all his strength. The bat connected with the alien's helmet. Crack! The alien stumbled, surprised by the primitive attack. Mark used the chance to fire another shot, this time hitting the alien in the exposed neck joint. The creature fell. The third alien tried to shoot at them, but Mark tackled Tim behind a mailbox just as a blue beam scorched the pavement where they had been standing. Mark pulled a knife from his boot. He looked at Tim. Distraction. Now. Tim grabbed a stone and threw it to the left, hitting a metal dumpster. Clang. The alien turned its head toward the noise. Mark launched himself from behind the mailbox. He didn't shoot. He was out of bullets. He threw the knife. It was a lucky throw. The blade stuck into the alien's shoulder, causing it to drop its weapon in pain. Mark lunged forward, grabbed the alien's own weapon, and smashed the heavy metal rifle into the creature's face until it stopped moving. Mark stood up, breathing hard. He looked at the dead aliens. He looked at Tim, who was staring at his hands, shaking. We killed them," Tim said. "We actually killed them." Mark picked up the alien weapon. It was heavy and felt cold. "Yeah. We did. Don't get cocky, kid. That was easy because they didn't expect us to fight." Mark pulled a small radio from his belt. He pressed the talk button. "Echo Net, this is Reed. Patrol neutralized at Sector 4. We have captured their weapons. Do you copy?" Sarah's voice came through the static. "Loud and clear, Reed. Good work. We are tracking a larger movement near the highway. If you can bring those weapons to the safe house, we might have a chance." "We are on our way," Mark said. As they moved through the back alleys, avoiding the main roads, Mark thought about what was happening. All over the world, people were doing the same thing. In the ruins of Paris, farmers were fighting with pitchforks against laser rifles. In the mountains of Asia, hunters were setting traps for the invaders. Humanity was disorganized, broken, and afraid. But humans were also stubborn. They reached the library basement. The door was hidden behind a pile of fallen bookshelves. Mark and Tim slipped inside. Sarah was there, along with 20 other survivors. There were old people, children, and former soldiers. They looked tired and hungry. When they saw the alien weapons Mark was carrying, their eyes lit up. Sarah walked over to Mark. She looked at the weapon. "This changes things. The energy cells are compatible with some of our older tech if we reverse the polarity. We can't win a war with 3 guns, Sarah," Mark said, putting the weapon on the table. "They have ships. We have hideouts." "No," Sarah said, pointing to a map on the wall. "We have numbers. They are here to harvest resources. They need us alive to work in their camps, or at least they did. Now they are just killing us in anger. Their discipline is breaking. I heard their commanders screaming at each other over the radio. They are frustrated. They don't understand why we won't just give up." Mark smiled. It was a grim smile. "Because we're human, we don't give up. That's what they don't get. They think superior tech means a superior spirit. They are wrong." Suddenly, the lights in the basement flickered. The radio crackled with an urgent message. "Emergency broadcast. Emergency broadcast. This is a call to all resistance cells. The enemy is mobilizing a large force to sweep the eastern sector. They are bringing the harvester machines. If you value your lives, run." Mark looked at Sarah. "Harvester?" Sarah's face went pale. "I read about those in the intercepted data. They are giant machines that eat entire buildings to process raw materials. If they send those in, they aren't trying to capture us anymore. They are trying to wipe the grid clean. We have to stop them, Tim said, surprising everyone. He looked stronger now. The fear was still there, but it was pushed down by anger. We don't have the firepower, a man in the back said. We have surprise, Mark replied. We have the underground tunnels. We have the sewers. We know this city better than they ever will. We aren't going to fight them in the open. We are going to fight them in the dark. Mark looked around the room at the faces of the survivors. They were regular people. A week ago, they were teachers, bankers, and drivers. Now, they were the only line of defense Earth had left. Sarah, get on the radio, Mark ordered. Tell everyone to set up traps at the intersection of 5th and Main. We are going to turn that street into a kill zone. You're going to lead an assault on a harvester, Sarah asked. Mark picked up the alien rifle again, checking the charge. Earth took the first hit. They punched us in the face. But now the bell has rung, and the fight has started. We aren't waiting for the cavalry, Sarah. We are the cavalry. The group nodded. They started grabbing their makeshift weapons. The mood in the room shifted from despair to determination. The aliens had underestimated the grit of humanity. They thought that if they destroyed the leaders and the armies, the people would just curl up and die. They were wrong. They had just woken a sleeping beast, and it was hungry for revenge. As Mark and his new squad moved out into the rainy night, the sound of distant explosions echoed. The sky was still dark, but for the first time in 3 days, Mark felt a spark of hope. It wasn't much, but it was enough to start a fire. Deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, the air was cold and recycled. Generators hummed loudly, providing the only light in the massive concrete bunker. This was the command center for Project Aegis, a secret base that the generals had hoped they would never have to use. General John Cole stood in front of a large digital map of the world. The map was mostly red. Red dots covered North America, Europe, and Asia, showing where the enemy controlled the land. General Cole was an old man. His hair was white, and his face was lined with years of worry. He wore a uniform that had medals on the chest, but none of those medals mattered now. The world was burning. For 3 weeks, the Zuldar had bombed cities, killed millions, and laughed at human attempts to fight back. They have total air superiority, sir, a young soldier said, running up to the general. Our fighter jets are sitting ducks. Their shields just bounce our missiles off. General Cole nodded. I know, son. I know. He turned to look at a man in a white lab coat standing near a bank of computers. Dr. Vance, are you ready? This is our last chance. Dr. Thomas Vance adjusted his glasses. He looked tired. He hadn't slept in 2 days. The railguns are charged, General. But the power grid is collapsing. We are using so much energy that we might black out the entire western seaboard if we fire. Let it go dark, Cole said firmly. If we don't stop them now, there won't be anyone left to turn the lights back on. Project Aegis was a dream that started 10 years ago. Scientists and military planners realized that one day, humans might meet an enemy stronger than them. They hid huge metal cannons in satellites disguised as weather stations and communication relays. These were not guns that used bullets. They used mass drivers. They fired solid metal rods at incredible speeds, so fast that they didn't need explosives. The sheer speed was enough to destroy a tank, a building, or a spaceship. The problem was, the aliens had energy shields that stopped standard missiles. But a shield can only stop energy or slow objects. It could not stop a heavy metal slug hitting it at 10 times the speed of sound. "The Zuldar are arrogant," Dr. Vance said, typing commands into his keyboard. "Their shields are tuned to stop our nuclear warheads and chemical rockets. They rely on the explosion to do the damage. Our railguns use kinetic energy. Just a rock thrown really, really fast. They won't see it coming until it's too late." Outside, the sky above the base was filled with alien ships. They were preparing to land troops to hunt down the human leadership. They thought they had won. They were celebrating, secure in their technology. General Cole looked at the red button on his desk. It was connected to the orbital network. "Sarah," he spoke into his microphone. "Do you have the jammer ready?" In a small, ruined apartment in a city near the base, Sarah Jenkins sat with her radio equipment. She had linked up with the military after Mark brought her the intel. She was the bridge between the soldiers in the tunnels and the commanders underground. "I'm ready, General," Sarah said. "But we only have a few seconds. The moment you fire, their scanners will pinpoint your location. They will blast this mountain off the map. They have to find us first," Cole said. "Initiate jamming sequence. Dr. Vance, fire the main rail guns." Dr. Vance took a deep breath. He pressed a single key on the keyboard. In space, 20,000 miles above the Earth, The satellites opened their metal panels. Long, smooth barrels extended, pointing down at the alien fleet. There was a flash, brighter than the sun, but silent in the vacuum of space. Massive tungsten rods, the size of telephone poles, shot out of the barrels. They moved so fast that the air in front of them turned into plasma. On the ground, Mark Reed and his squad were watching the sky from a hill. They were hiding behind rocks. They saw the alien ships hovering silently, casting long shadows. Suddenly, streaks of white light tore through the clouds. "Get down!" Mark yelled. The rod slammed into the alien ships. There were no explosions at first. Just a deafening crack of thunder. The lead alien capital ship, a massive vessel the size of a city, suddenly split in half. The railgun rod had passed straight through its energy shields as if they were made of paper. It tore through the engine room and exited the other side. The alien ship groaned and tilted. Fire erupted from the inside. It began to fall. Then came the second rod. It struck a smaller carrier. The impact was so hard that the ship was pushed into the ground, crushing a forest. A huge mushroom cloud of dust and debris rose up. "What was that?" Tim asked, his mouth open in shock. "Did we do that?" Mark watched the alien ships falling from the sky. A huge grin spread across his dirty face. "Yeah," he said. "That was us." The general came through. The aliens were in panic. Their communication channels, which Sarah was monitoring, filled with screams and confused orders. They didn't understand what was happening. Their sensors told them the human weapons were primitive. They had never faced kinetic bombardment before. "Target the landing ships." General Cole's voice boomed over the radio. "Don't let them retreat." In the bunker, the lights flickered and dimmed. The massive power drain was causing the generators to overheat. "The targeting computer is lagging," Dr. Vance shouted. "I need to manual override." Dr. Vance's fingers flew across the keys. He was guiding the final shots manually. Sweat dripped from his forehead. "I am locked on the main command vessel. That is their flagship." "Take it out," General Cole ordered. The flagship of the Zuldar fleet was hovering over the ruins of Chicago. It was the biggest ship, bristling with weapons. Suddenly, a railgun rod streaked down from orbit. It didn't hit the ship directly. It hit the main propulsion engine on the side of the ship. The explosion was blinding. The ship spun out of control, its blue lights flickering and dying. It crashed into Lake Michigan, sending a tidal wave of water crashing into the ruined shores. All over the world, the secret orbital network fired. Over London, over Tokyo, over Moscow. The aliens, who thought they were untouchable gods, were being knocked down to earth. Their shields, designed to stop missiles, were useless against the sheer weight and speed of the rods. On the ground, the human resistance saw the enemy falling. It was a sign. "We attack now," Mark yelled into his radio. "They are confused. Hit them while they are down." From the woods, from the sewers, and from the rubble, humans emerged. They had scavenged alien weapons, and now they had the courage to use them. They charged the alien landing zones that were now in chaos. In the bunker, General Cole watched the main screen. The red dots were disappearing. The alien fleet was broken. "Dr. Vance, status report," Cole said. Dr. Vance slumped back in his chair, exhausted but smiling. "Railguns are empty. We fired everything we had. But, look." The screen showed the remaining alien ships. They were retreating. They were turning their noses upward and firing their engines to escape back into space. "They are running," Cole said, a rare smile appearing on his face. "I never thought I'd see the day." Suddenly, a siren blared in the bunker. The lights turned red. "Sir!" a technician yelled. "The flagship that crashed in the lake, it's still alive. It's sending a signal." General Cole walked over to the technician's screen. "What kind of signal?" "It's a distress signal," the technician said. "But it's also a targeting data packet. They are calling for help. They are sending their coordinates to somewhere outside the solar system." Dr. Vance sat up straight. "They aren't just retreating. They are calling the rest of their hive. If a larger fleet comes, we won't be able to stop them. Our railguns are empty. It will take months to reload." The mood in the room turned from victory to fear. They had won the battle, but the war was far from over. "Can we intercept the signal?" Cole asked. Sarah's voice crackled over the radio. "General, this is Sarah. I hear the signal. It's complex encryption, but my team is working on it. I think we can hack it. If we can break their code, we can find out where they came from." General Cole looked at the map. He looked at the smoking ruins of the invasion force. Humanity had taken a beating. They had been knocked down. But they had stood back up. They had struck back hard. "Do it," Cole commanded. "We aren't just going to defend Earth anymore. If they come back, we need to be ready to go to them." The sleeping dragon had awoken. The aliens had woken a beast that possessed both claws and brains. The battle for the sky was over, and humanity had survived. But looking at the stars, General Cole knew this was only the beginning. The humans were angry, and they were not going to hide in holes forever. They were coming out. The smoke still rose from the ruins of the battlefield, but the feeling in the air had changed. The fear was gone, replaced by a cold, hard anger. For days, humanity had run and hidden, but after the railguns from space destroyed the main alien fleet, the tide had turned. The aliens, the Zuldar, were no longer the unstoppable gods they pretended to be. They were trapped on Earth, their ships broken, their supplies cut off. In the deserts of Nevada, a massive convoy was moving. It was not a convoy of refugees, but a convoy of war. It was led by Captain Mike Ross. He sat inside the driver's seat of a massive tank, but it wasn't a normal tank. It was a hybrid machine, built using human steel and alien technology salvaged from the crash sites. Mike had spent his life driving heavy machinery for construction, but the war had turned him into a soldier. He wore a dusty uniform and a pair of welding goggles around his neck. "Column, halt," Mike's voice crackled over the radio. "We have contact." Through the thick dust ahead, the shapes of alien walkers appeared. They were tall, spider-like machines that the Zuldar used to patrol the wastes. They usually traveled in groups of 5. Today, there were at least 20 of them. "There are too many," said a young gunner named Lisa, sitting next to Mike. "Our cannons aren't strong enough for that many walkers." Mike looked at the alien walkers. They were advancing slowly, thinking they were the hunters. They did not know that humans had learned how to fight dirty. "We don't need stronger cannons," Mike said calmly. "We need to be smarter. Activate the EMP jammers." A truck behind the tank opened its roof, revealing a strange device. It was a giant magnet, spinning rapidly. It used alien power cores to create a pulse of electromagnetic energy. When Mike gave the signal, the device fired a wave of invisible distortion at the alien walkers. The alien machines were advanced, but they relied heavily on electronics. The pulse hit them, and suddenly, the walkers froze. Their legs locked up. Their weapons went dead. They were just metal statues standing in the sand. "Open fire!" Mike yelled. The human tanks roared. They didn't need high-tech lasers to destroy the disabled walkers. Simple, heavy shells did the job. The walkers exploded one by one, turning into balls of fire. It was a slaughter, but this time, the aliens were the victims. High above the battlefield, the sky was clear. Emily Hart was flying her jet. She was a pilot for the Air Force, and her jet had been modified with parts taken from a downed alien scout ship. Her jet looked like a mix of a fighter plane and a UFO. She saw the battle on the ground going well, but her focus was on the sky. Alien interceptors were coming in fast, trying to save their ground troops. There were 3 of them, flying in a tight formation. "Bandits at 12 o'clock, Emily said to herself. "Time to dance." She pushed the throttle forward. Her jet shot upward. The alien planes were faster, but Emily knew the jet stream. She flew into the upper atmosphere, where the air was thin. The alien planes followed her, their sensors locked onto her heat signature. They fired their green lasers. Emily didn't try to dodge. She cut her engines and deployed her air brakes. Her plane seemed to stop in mid-air. The lasers passed harmlessly underneath her. The aliens, confused by the sudden loss of speed, overshot her and flew right in front of her. "Gotcha," Emily whispered. She fired her machine guns. The aliens didn't have shields facing the rear. Her bullets tore into their engines. 2 of the planes spiraled down, crashing into the desert. The third one tried to escape, but Emily activated a grappling hook she had installed. It fired from her nose cone and latched onto the alien plane's tail. "Let's see how you handle a tow," Emily said. She banked hard, dragging the alien fighter into a spin. The alien pilot couldn't control the centrifugal force. The plane broke apart. Emily released the hook and leveled out, soaring through the clouds. She felt a surge of pride. The aliens had better tech, but humans had better pilots. Back at the command bunker beneath the mountain, Sarah Jenkins was working on her computer. She was not fighting with guns, but with code. The Zildar were trying to regroup. They were using a hidden communication tower in a nearby city to coordinate their forces and call for rescue. "I found it," Sarah said, sweat dripping down her face. "They are trying to send a distress signal to their home world." "Can we stop it?" General John Cole asked, standing behind her. "I can't stop the signal," Sarah admitted. "But I can change it. I can hack their network and insert a virus. If they think the call is getting through, they will wait. It will buy us time." "Do it," the general ordered. Sarah typed furiously. Her fingers were a blur. She was fighting against an alien language system, but the aliens were arrogant. They used simple codes because they never expected a primitive species to understand their software. It took her 20 minutes to break the firewall. With a final strike of the Enter key, she was in. "I'm in," Sarah said. "I'm uploading the Trojan horse virus. It will make their screens look normal, but we are recording everything they say." Suddenly, the speakers in the bunker crackled. It was the alien commander's voice. It was translated into English by a program Sarah had written. "Extraction team," the voice hissed. "The pests are aggressive. We cannot hold the sector. We are pulling back to the mountain fortress. Defend the beacon." General Cole slammed his fist on the table. "They have a fortress where?" Sarah brought up a topographical map. A red dot appeared deep in the mountains, exactly where the alien mothership had crashed. "They are digging in. They are protecting the beacon." "What is the beacon?" Cole asked. "I think," Sarah said slowly, "it's their navigational computer. If we can capture it, we can reverse engineer their star charts. We can find out where their home planet is." The room went silent. The idea was shocking. They were thinking about defending Earth, but now, there was a chance to take the fight to the enemy. "We need to mobilize everything," General Cole said. "Mark, are you listening?" Mark Reed's voice came over the radio. "I hear you, General. My team is ready. We are already moving towards the mountain." "Be careful," Cole said. "They will be guarding that fortress with everything they have." "We will get through," Mark said. "We have to." In the forest near the mountain fortress, the situation was intense. Mark and his squad, including Tim, were moving quietly through the trees. The trees were blackened and burnt from the crash. In the center of a large crater, the massive hull of the alien mothership lay tilted. It was leaking green fluid and smoke. Around it, the aliens had set up energy shields and hundreds of automated turrets. "There are too many of them," Tim whispered. "We will be shot before we even get close." Mark looked through his binoculars. He saw the energy shield glowing blue. The shield protects them from air attacks. But they have to open a small door to let their ground troops in and out. That is the weak spot. "We only have one shot," Tim said. "I know," Mark said. He looked at his team. They were a mix of soldiers, police officers, and civilians. They held alien weapons that they had scavenged. "Emily is flying above. She will provide a distraction. When she attacks, we rush the door." High in the sky, Emily saw the signal flare from the ground. She banked her jet and dove towards the fortress. The alien turrets immediately tracked her and fired a wall of green lasers. "I really hope this works," Emily said to herself. She flew erratically, weaving left and right. She dropped a payload of magnetic mines right onto the alien shield generator. The mines stuck to the surface and exploded. The blue shield flickered and went down for a few seconds. Now! Mark yelled into his radio. Charge! Tim and the rest of the squad ran down the slope of the crater. Bullets and lasers flew past them. Some of the squad members fell, but the others kept running. They fired their captured weapons at the aliens guarding the door. The element of surprise was on their side. The aliens thought the humans were beaten. They didn't expect a frontal assault by crazy humans. Mark reached the blast door first. He slapped an explosive charge on the control panel. Fire in the hole. The explosion blew the door off its hinges. Mark and Tim threw gas grenades inside. Green smoke filled the corridor, blinding the aliens. Mark rushed in, firing his weapon. We are inside the fortress. Mark screamed into the radio. Send the heavy tanks. We are taking the ship. General Cole watched the tactical screen in the bunker. The red dots representing the aliens were falling. The humans were pushing them back. It was a desperate, bloody fight, but humanity was winning. They were fighting with a ferocity that terrified the aliens. The humans did not care about the odds. They did not care about dying. They only cared about victory. Mike Ross's tank column smashed through the forest, crushing the alien defenses. They fired their cannons point blank at the fortress walls, creating a breach for the infantry. Emily circled overhead, keeping the alien air force at bay. She saw the humans swarming the crashed ship. It was a sight to behold. The species that was supposed to be wiped out in a day was now invading the invaders. Sarah watched the data stream on her screen. General, I have the star charts. I have their coordinates. General Cole picked up the phone on his desk. This line connected to the leaders of the remaining Free World armies. This is General Cole, he said. We have breached their fortress. But we aren't stopping there. Prepare the captured ships. We are going to finish this. The tide had turned. The humans had taken the hit, survived the blow, and were now hitting back harder. The Zuldar realized too late that they were not fighting a primitive race. They were fighting a species that had evolved to survive the toughest environments, a species that never gave up. Humanity had reached the enemy's doorstep, and they were knocking loudly. The war for Earth had ended, but the war for the future was just beginning. The crashed alien mothership in the mountains was now a hive of activity, but the sounds were no longer of war. They were the sounds of drills, welders, and human voices shouting orders. The Zuldar had been defeated. Their ground troops had surrendered or been captured, and their terrifying ships were now being stripped down by human engineers. In the main control room of the captured vessel, Captain David Miller stood looking at a massive star map. He was wearing a flight suit that had been patched up many times. He was tired, but his eyes were bright with a fierce determination. "Are you sure about this?" Captain asked Sarah Jenkins. She was sitting at a computer terminal, her fingers flying across the keys. She had cracked the alien code and stolen their secrets. Their homeworld is very far away. Even with their faster-than-light drive, it is a long journey. "We don't have a choice, Sarah," David said, his voice low and steady. "They called us pests. They tried to exterminate us. If we just sit here and repair our planet, they will come back in 10 years with a bigger fleet. We can't let that happen." David turned to face the room full of people. There was General John Cole, standing with his hands behind his back. Mark Reed and Tim were there, cleaning their weapons. Jessica Moore was organizing medical supplies. They were the leaders of the resistance, the survivors of the apocalypse. "We have the technology," David continued. We have their ships. We have their maps. Most importantly, we have the anger. General Cole stepped forward. He looked older than he had a month ago, but he stood tall. The world is in ruins, but we are rebuilding. We are taking every working alien ship we can find and mounting human weapons on them. We are building a fleet. Not a fleet to defend Earth, but a fleet to take the fight to them. The plan is simple, Sarah said, pointing to a red dot on the star map. The Zuldar call their planet Zuldar Prime. It is the center of their empire. It has no defenses because they never thought anyone would dare attack them. They are too arrogant. Arrogance is a weakness, Mark Reed said, leaning against the wall. We learned that the hard way. Now, we use it against them. The preparations took 3 months. It was a race against time. Human scientists worked day and night to understand the alien technology. It was difficult, but humans were adaptable. They found ways to mix alien power sources with human weapons. The railguns from the orbital platform were mounted onto the hulls of the alien battleships. The ships looked strange, a mix of sleek silver alien metal and blocky, rough human steel. On the day of the launch, the sky was clear. Thousands of people stood on the ground, watching the fleet prepare. It was a strange sight to see human flags painted on the sides of alien warships. David Miller stood on the bridge of the flagship. He had named it the Phoenix. It represented humanity rising from the ashes. Engage the drive, David ordered. The ship hummed with power. The stars outside the window stretched into lines of light. In a blink of an eye, the Earth disappeared. They were traveling faster than light, leaving their home behind to face the enemy on their own soil. The journey was tense. The crew practiced the battle drills over and over. They knew they would only get one chance. When they dropped out of light speed, they were right in the orbit of Zuldar Prime. The alien planet was beautiful. It had purple oceans and silver continents. Around it, there were only a few patrol ships. They didn't even have a guard up, Mike Ross said, shaking his head in disbelief. Mike was now the weapons officer on the Phoenix. They thought they were safe, David said. Sound the alarm. Target the planet. Do not fire on the cities yet. We want their attention. The human fleet deployed. The Zuldar patrol ships panicked. They sent frantic messages asking who was attacking. When they saw the human flags painted on the hulls, they were confused. Open a channel, David said. Let's talk to their emperor. A face appeared on the main screen. It was the Zuldar leader. He had pale skin and many eyes. He looked shocked. How did you get here? The emperor hissed. You are primitives. You should be dead. We are not dead, David said. And we are not primitives. We are humanity. And we are here to negotiate your surrender. The emperor laughed, a cold, clicking sound. Surrender? We have thousands of ships. You have stolen a few. You are nothing. We don't need thousands, David said calmly. Mark, target their moon. Mark Reed smiled and pressed a button. The Phoenix fired its main railgun. It was not aimed at the planet, but at the moon orbiting it. The tungsten rod hit the moon with such force that the moon didn't just crack, it shattered. Debris flew into space, and the impact shook the planet below. The smile vanished from the Emperor's face. You destroyed a moon. Target the capital city, David said, his voice like iron. Give the order, or we turn your silver continent into dust. The silence on the bridge was heavy. The crew watched the screen. They didn't want to kill civilians, but they knew that mercy to the Zuldar was a mistake humanity could not afford. Wait! The Emperor screamed. Stop! We surrender! We surrender! David looked at the general. General Cole nodded. Hold fire, David said. But listen closely. You attacked Earth without warning. You killed our people. Now, the rules have changed. You will dismantle your war machines. You will give us your technology. And if you ever threaten Earth again, we won't miss the planet. The Zuldar fleet stood down. The war was over in minutes. Weeks later, David Miller stood on the surface of Zuldar Prime. He was looking at a strange, purple tree. The war was truly finished. The Zuldar were paying for their crimes by helping Earth rebuild. Their ships were hauling resources to repair the damage done to New York, Tokyo, and the other cities. Mark Reed and Tim walked up to him. They were wearing new uniforms, clean for the first time in a long time. So, what do we do now? Tim asked. We won. David looked up at the sky. He could see the stars, endless and full of possibilities. We go home, he said. And we make sure Earth is never weak again. We keep watching the stars. We made sure that Earth took the first hit, but we made sure it was the last. If anyone else comes looking for a fight, we will be ready. Jessica, Sarah, and Mike joined them. They stood together on the alien world, far from home. They looked like a small group, but they represented the spirit of their entire species. It's funny, Sarah said softly. The aliens thought they were better than us because they were older and stronger. They didn't know that the things that make us human, our stubbornness, our will to protect each other, our refusal to give up, are actually our greatest strengths. Yeah, Mike laughed. They messed with the wrong planet. The group turned towards their ship. It was time to return. They had gone to the edge of the galaxy and faced the monsters. They had won against impossible odds. As they walked back to the Phoenix, David felt a sense of peace wash over him. The nightmare was over. The sun would rise on Earth tomorrow, and for the first time in a long time, it would rise on a free and safe world. Humanity had been knocked down, trampled, and underestimated. But they had gotten back up, bloody but unbowed. They had taken the fight to the enemy and won. The galaxy would learn one lesson that day: do not poke the beast. Because when Earth fights, it fights to the end.